issue, and I don't want you guys to have an issue with that stuff. All right, we're back. We are COMP123 in the summer 2019 semester at Centennial, where we are week 10, part 2 of our broadcast. We're talking about, we just finished talking about generics, and we're going to go right into talking about animation and special effects. I will do a couple of things that are slightly different. Your project was broken. I don't know why, but when I opened up your project, which is part C, we had some issues. So I'm going to open up part B for this recording, right? Because the B team's project worked better than yours. Sorry, right? So please forgive me. So let's take a look at this. What do we have from last time? So what we did with the B team is exactly what I wanted to do with you guys, right? Which was something that looked like this. All right? Let me just stop that for a second and resize my screen, because I think you guys need to see a little bit a bigger screen so you guys can have some comfort, or else it's going to be too small for you guys to see. Heck, it's going to be too small for me to see, and that would be kind of weird. All right, so let's go back in here and try that again. Sorry? It's all good. Take a look. All right, so here's what it should normally look like. So I'm running off of COMP123 Summer 2019 Lesson 9B, not C. Your C style didn't work. And we were left with something that looks like this. Okay, this is great, and I can do something like this. I can say 965, and then press done, and it goes here. But what if I want to do this to anything that I click on? I don't want just to do it on this label. I want to use my numeric keypad, you know, multiple times, right? So I know it's working now. I mean, if I go clear, right? I want to clear my keypad and press done, it's going to go to 0, right? Now, curious, is 0 the right amount? Should it be 0? And the answer is probably not. It should probably be like 0.1 minimum, because otherwise 0 could cause a problem with calculations. You might get a really weird calculation, right? So we should probably stop that and to make it 0.1. The other thing that I want to do is I want to have multiple labels. Let's handle one thing at a time. So if we go back to our code examples, we had something that looked like this. So we had our calculator button click events, and we had these 3 different kinds of inputs: output string, decimal exists, and output value. And we stored in our output string the stuff that we're going to put out. Now again, if you're not seeing this, it's because I'm looking at lesson 9B, and you might be looking at lesson 9C, totally different. Please download 9B from GitHub. And if you don't know where to get that from, and people have asked me this, they're like, where can I find your GitHub? Do this. Go to GitHub, and then go / and then Centennial College. And if you download Centennial College, you'll see that there's 9A, B, and C, and 9A is the last thing I worked on. I'm working on 9B with you guys right now, which is right here. By the way, why am I not showing you 9A? That's the completed version, right? So if you want the completed version, after this, it's in 9A, and I'm going to give you the completed version together in 9B. But please don't go to 9C, because 9C is broken. We couldn't make it work for whatever reason. I don't know if it was Visual Studio or something I clicked, but it wouldn't work, and now I got it working, so let's use this version. Wonderful. If it works for you, keep going with it. All right, let's go back to this. So here is what I have. So I got a couple of values: output string, decimal exists, and output value, okay? So what I do here is I do this. In my calculator click event, I have something called the button. I'm using a tag to store the information. Again, in my design side, what I've decided to do is each of the buttons on my calculator here. And if I go to properties, so if I click on the button of my property of my button, you can see that each button also, not only does it have a text value, if it does, but also a tag property. And the tag property is going to help us because some buttons don't have a value. An example will be this button. This is our custom button for my backspace character, right? And backspace, there is no value because it's an image. So I can't use text. I have to use something else, and I'm using the tag property to do a comparison, okay? So that's why I did that. Now you can use any other property as well, but I'm using tag because it makes sense. Okay, so clear, there's clear, and notice I have a tag property for all these non-numeric buttons. Clear, done, and also decimal. All of these four buttons have a tag that says the type that they are. Okay? All right. Also notice that I have this button, this label right here, and this label right here has, I called it height label. Well, this is nice, but what if I want to have height, weight, and age like you need for your BMI, right? So I'm going to pull this over here like this from a design perspective. Just pull it to the side, and then I'm going to control drag down here to make this one and another one. So I have three labels now, but they're called different things. This one is height label. Here, this one is weight label. Let's call this weight label. And this one, right, this one is age label. Oop, not label O. Age label. There, they're separate now. However, one thing to note is they have a height label click event, right? This doesn't make any sense. We can't use a height label click for this one and this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to rename height label click event to something called active label. We don't know which label it's going to be. Hey, this is almost a chance for us to use generics, right? We have no idea what label it's going to be. It could be any one of those labels. It could be none of them, right? So this way, we don't know which one it's going to be. So instead of calling it height label, we want to call it something else. So I'm just going to double click here. You can see that I go back here to height label in my calculator form.cs, and I want to rename this to active label click. So I'm going to right click and go rename, and then rename this thing to what I want, which is going to be called active label. Okay? So I don't know which one it's going to be, but this thing is going to be shared by all those three labels. So whatever label I click, this thing here is going to be the one I want to use. Okay, I don't have an active label. Can you help me code it? I want it to be any label. That's what I want it to be. And I'm going to use it as a container to point to the label that is the one that I clicked on. So how would I make that? And where would I put it if I was going to ask you to do this on a test? How would you do this thing? Well, I could, but that would be very specific, right? So I want to go up here first of all. Remember, active label is going to be something that is another property. Okay, so here we go. Here's another property. But instead of making it a float, double, or something else, it's going to be of type label this time. Let's try this out. So prop is the shortcut. Tab. Instead of an integer, I want to put in label, right? And I want to tab over again and call this one active label. Question, does active label have a value right now? What is it pointing to? Is it even instantiated? The answer to all those questions is no. It doesn't have a value. It's not been instantiated. It doesn't even have anything. It's literally null right now. It's not pointing to anything. But we should ensure when we make something like this, because it's a reference type, we should ensure that there is a value for this thing starting off. And the value of active label should start off as null. Okay? So where do we do that? Well, we know we have a calculator form here. This is our constructor. And we also have this calculator button click. And further down in the code, by chance, we have this calculator form load event. I don't like my calculator form load or any kind of form lifecycle events. That's what we like to call them, lifecycle events. We don't want anything of the form down here. I'd like to put this closer to my constructor. So I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to move it all the way underneath my constructor function, which is here. There. Now this is just semantics, but here, look, I clear the numeric keypad. I want to do that, but I also want to set my active label to null. I want to set my active label to null. So it's not pointing at anything right now. Okay, let's do that. So when my form loads, my active label, it points to null. Okay, points to null. So now this makes sure that there's no pointer to anything. It points to nothing right now. If it points to nothing, and I know it points to nothing, I can test for this, right? I can already test to see if it's pointing to null. So then going down to where we were before, when I clicked on my active label, here's my active label. When I click onto it, what I want to do is I want to set my active label to something else. Well, it's going to be part of the sender, right? The sender itself is of type label. We don't know what it is here, but we want to cast it as type label, right? So here's the code, my friends. It's going to look like this. Active label is equal to my sender as a label. Remember, this is the way we cast it. So now what we're doing is we're saying, hey, active label is pointing at the label that I clicked in order for me to get here in the first place. That's what it's going to do, right? So what it does is it gives us more options. Okay, this is cool. Active label is sender, but we want to target active label for that's where our value is going to go. Now, if you remember up here, and if you don't remember, that's okay. What we did was we have this, we set it to result label. It can't be result label anymore. It's got to be, because that's too specific. It's got to be active label in our thing. So if I go all the way to the top where it says finalize output, my friend says, let's call it finalize output. I think that's a great name, finalize output, right? So instead of targeting my height label, let's change this to active label. Let's do that. So this is on line 119 of my code, and again, it's in the finalize output method. I'm changing it to active label. Okay, cool. We have some problems though. You're going to see we're going to have some problems, right? Let's try this out. So if I run it, now it looks like this. I have three labels, right? Label 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. I click on this one, right? When I click onto it, my label, my active label, that's going to be the target. But I don't know that is. I have no idea that's the target, right? If I type in 98 and press done, you can see that it goes there, right? And if I press this again, click onto it, and if I press 65 and I press done, it goes there, right? So it's kind of doing some of the stuff. The other thing is my keyboard comes up right away. And I don't need my keyboard to come up unless I want to type anything in there. So we should start my keyboard, that part, as invisible. My visible should be false. So let's do that. So in here, what we're going to do is we start off, and inside my load event, by default, my keyboard should be false, my visibility. So we can say something like, my calculator button table layout panel, that's my keyboard, dot visible, right, is equal to false. That's a terrible name, but it's very descriptive. Calculator button table layout panel, right? And if I say it's false, then when I start my code, what we see is something that looks like this. Then I click onto it, and now it becomes visible again. And I can type in 98, press done, and go over here and type 85, press done, and go over here and press 3.698 and press done, and expect it to be something smaller than this, right? By the way, why is this not good, 3.698? Do I really care about this, accuracy? Chances are not. In weight, when you have your weight, you only care about like one digit, maybe two, right? So yes, we could leave it like this, but we may want to change this to like round it up to like 3.7, right? Okay, so this is okay, but I have no indicator. If I go back to here, look, it gives me 0 again. That's a problem. And also, there's nothing that highlights or updates that I'm working on it. And by the way, what if I change halfway through? So I'm here, I'm targeting now this one. Okay, I want to change this one. Oh, what about I want to do this one? I want to change different ones. I have no idea what I'm doing. I need more feedback for the user. Remember, guys and girls, that everything that you do with Windows Forms is about the user experience. Okay, so we want to be able to give the user feedback in the form of visual feedback, sometimes audible feedback too, that something's happening. Okay, so let's try this out. So first of all, let's make it so that when I click on one of these labels, it turns blue, like a light blue. Okay, so again, I clicked on the label. Here's my active label, right? Way down here. I click onto the label, and as soon as I click on it, I want to make it blue. By the way, there's stuff we have to change here, okay? So first I have my active label, and I want to turn it blue. Active label dot back color is equal to a color, let's call it light blue. There we go. So this changes the color of the label to blue, so to tell us that we've clicked onto it. Okay, this is what it looks like now. Okay, I click onto it, yay, it turns blue. I know this is blue. By the way, look, these things are no value, and I put in a value of 98 and press done, and you can see that there's a value there. And I go back to this one. Uh-oh, look, this is still blue. This is still blue. This can't be blue when I'm done. This has got to be white again, right? I finished with it. I don't want it to be highlighted anymore. I got to do that. Let's do that next. So, okay, fine. This is when I click on the label, but then I have this finalize method, which is right up here. I want to change this one so my active label back color, before I'm done, is white. So I'm going to say my active label dot back color is equal to color dot white. Not wheat, white. There we go. So now it looks like this. I start, I click on my color, and then I press done, and it goes away. And I click on this one and press done, and it goes away. But look what happens here. I get these values, right? And then I press this one and press done, and it goes away. Okay? But what if I click this one, and then I click this one, and then I click this one? That's bad too, right? It can't be like this. If I click something else, as soon as I click something, and if there already is an active label, so I already have an active label, my active label is not equal to null, then I want to erase that one first and point it at null. Okay? Also, what I want to do when I finalize, I also want my active label to go back to null, right, when I finalize. So I'm going to do that now too. So active back color is this. My active label is equal to null. I want to nullify it because I'm not using it anymore. So I'm not pointing to it anymore. Okay, that's number one. But what about if I click on something else? So down in here, if I click on something, okay, and then I click on something else, I don't want to highlight both of them. I want to unhighlight the other one. So it would be looking like something like this. First of all, I would check to see if my active label has already been assigned. Is it not null? If active label is not equal to null, I know we already have an active label. We already have a label we clicked on. We already have a label that's blue. Okay? If that's true, then I want to say that active label dot back color is equal to color dot white. Now we're repeating ourselves. Every single time I do this color dot white stuff, and I did it like 3 times already, that tells you in your mind there's got to be a better way. If I'm repeating myself in my code, there's got to be a better way. There must be. Okay? So I did this. I say, okay, if its active color is this, then turn it to null. And you know what we want to do? Just to clean up, we want to set our active label, if we're clicking away again, is equal to null. We're going to make it equal to null. We're going to wipe it out. We're going to point somewhere else, right? Let's clean up. Okay, let's see how this works now. So I'm going to say something like this. When I click on my label, yay, and then I click on the other one, and the other one. So now I'm pointing at different objects. Okay? Now here's the other problem. I type in 98 and press done. I have 98, but I want to type in it again. But now I don't have that value anymore. I want to take the value, if there's a value already there, if it's not equal to 0 or nothing, right? These things, by the way, curious, should they be equal to nothing? Or no, they should be equal to 0 at the minimum, right? So let's make them equal to something. So by default, these 4 labels, or these 3 labels, let's go back. We should make the text value of each of these labels, this one, let me just click away and click back. This one, and this one, we should change the text value of all of these, right, to 0, right, because that's normal. It should be 0 starting off. Alright, so now we have something we can compare. We can say that if the label is 0, right, that's okay. We can leave it as is. But what if the label is not 0? We want to take the current value that's stored in that label, and we want to pull it into our little calculator. That's what we want to do. Okay? So let's do that change. So again, going back to this, I'm going to say that when I click onto this, the next check I want to say is, okay, fine, we're not null, and we got a new label we're pointing to. But now what we want to do is we want to check to see what it is. So we're going to say that down in here, we're going to say if active label, right, if active label dot text is not equal to 0 somehow, if that's not equal to 0, what we want to do is we want to take the value of the text and put it into our result label and our output string. We want those things to match. So we're going to say that our result label dot text is equal to active label dot text. As well, we want to say that, sorry, it's the other way around. I'll be okay. Ha ha ha. I meant to do it this way. And I also want to say that my output string dot text, actually my output string is a text, is also equal to this. I want to have my output string start off as this, right? Because hey, I want to be able to, when I click on something that has a value, I want to take that value and display it in my little result by default. All right? So how does this work? If I press play, now if I do this, notice these are zeros, so I still have 0. But what if it's 98? And then I click back in there. It should say 98. Uh-oh. Oh man. What happened? Well, okay, my result label is this, my active label is this. I meant it the other way around. Actually, I was right the first time. I was right the first time. I meant it the other way around. I meant to do this. Hold on a second. I'm getting confused too. I meant that it should be equal to, it should be equal to this. Sorry, that was the right way to do it. And output string should also be equal to active label. Sorry, wrong one. Let's try that again. So, and then click onto it, press 98, press enter, and if I click back now I see 98. And what this does is it says, hey, I have a value, and if I change this, I can backspace it, I can change to 96, and that'll change. I can go here, and then go here, and you can see that it automatically takes that value. This is good. And I can add 0.3 to it, and press done, and it'll take 0.3. These are all good effects. Okay? So now I've kind of done it. I've made it so that each of my labels, whichever label I want, takes on the value that I wanted, to put it in there. Now, here's something that I do want to do, right? I want to make sure that each of these values makes sense. Like, for example, remember, I'm going to do BMI calculations, and for your program, right, you can't divide by 0, guys. It's not allowed. So if you go like, let's say, height or weight over height can't be 0, right? So your height should start off at a minimum of 0.1 or some other value, because no one is like 0 height, right? And no one is 0 weight, and no one is 0 age, right? So really the value of 0 doesn't make any sense, right? You should change it at least to 0.1. So these values here, we could definitely change to 0.1, but I'm going to leave that one to you, all right? You guys figure out how to do that. It doesn't take a lot of thinking for that, but there should be a minimum of 0.1 in order for you to prevent some kind of division by 0 error. Okay, cool. So we've got that, but what if, let's take a look at this form here. I mean, I have other things to put here. I have like my BMI message. I have other things that I've asked you to put here, and there's no room. Look at this thing. This like numeric data. It takes up this whole half of my application. What about if I want to put a logo? What about if I want to put some additional things, a slider, or some other really weird things? I have no room for it. This is no good, right? Here's something else. What about if I'm a user and I click away, like in a regular phone app, right? If I press away from my keyboard, it'll go away, right? I want that. I want my keyboard to go away when I press onto it or press away from it. And I also want it so that it's not taking up my room every single time over here from a design perspective. What do I do? Yeah. This one? All right, so that's an interesting question. So tell me now, what is sender? What does sender mean from an event handling perspective? Whatever we are? No, whatever we clicked on. So whatever I click on, this is the click event, whatever I click on is the sender object, right? That's what it represents. But here's the question. We don't know what we're clicking on. We can click on a button, we can click on a label, we can click on a text box, we can click on the form. This event handler is generic. Remember, it's using a delegate. That means it can take anything, any control, right? So because it can take any control, we can't change the type from sender to label. So we have to cast it. We have to say, hey, by the way, when I click on this thing, cast sender as a label. And as, this keyword as, which we covered in an earlier lesson, is like casting. It's called downcasting. And we're casting the type sender as, instead of an object, we're making it a very specific object, which is a type label. That's what we're doing. Okay, otherwise it will not work. And also, remember that objects, generic objects, don't have text. They don't have anything. We don't know what they are, right? When we say that the sender, which is an object, is a label, we actually create a new shape for the sender object, right? Which is the shape of a label, which means that it has all the methods and properties and everything else that a label would have. Okay? That's why. Alright, so that is this piece. Let's go back to this. So, okay, I want to click away. I want to click here on the background. And when I click on my form somewhere, I want this keyboard to go away. Alright, how does this work? Well, we have, up on the top here, we have a form load event, but I need another event. The default, when I double click on the form, the default, if I do this, takes me here. I want another event for the form. When I click on the form in the background, anywhere in the background, it's going to give me a new event. Okay, how do I do that? I have to make my own event. So I'm going to bring up my properties, and instead of going to my properties for my form, I'm going to go to my events, this little lightning bolt. And instead of the load event, I want to scroll up, and I want to kind of put on the click event. Here's the click event. And I want to make my own custom name for this, which is form load, or the form click. What's my form? It's my calculator form. Calculator form underscore click. That's what I'm calling it. You can actually make your own events this way instead of double clicking or that kind of stuff. You can just go in here into the events part and then just press enter, and what it'll do is it'll make your own event. Here's my calculator form click event. Okay, that means when I click on the calculator form, right, the actual calculator form itself, not on a label, not on a button, not somewhere else, on the actual back of the form, what I want it to do is make my keyboard go away. Okay? In iOS, or Android, what I'm really doing is I'm resigning my my control. I have control of where I'm looking. I'm resigning control. I'm saying, okay, I don't want my keyboard anymore. Go back, to the regular stuff, the other objects in my my form. Okay, so here in my calculator form click, it's a new event. So I'm going to comment it a little bit. I want to say that this is the event handler for the calculator form click event. Okay, and now because it's a form event and it's not some other event, I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to put it near the top, near my other form event, like this. I'm just putting it next to the other calculator form event. Alright, so that means when I click on my calculator form, I want to do two things. I want to make my calculator button table layout panel visibility as false. I want to clear my keyboard, and I want to make my active labels null. Guys, this is the exact same thing I'm doing here. Alright, so whenever I do this, you should say, warning, I'm copying code. Copying code, bad. So copy, paste. Remember the first way I do it? I do this. What's my method? Make your user interface. Second method, make it work. Third method, refactor. I'm not refactoring. Refactor's last, right? I make it all work, and when it's working properly, then I go back and fix it, right? Make it nicer. Alright, so cool. I've got this, and I want to, kind of press play. What about if it's already like this? If I click onto it, is it going to do anything to me? If I click on, there's nothing, there's no keyboard right now. Alright, but what if I click here and then click away? Oh man, what happened? Look at this. It didn't turn this off, right? That's no good. So if here's something that I need to do. If, when I click this calculator form, if active label is not null, right, then I got to make sure that the background is white again. Oh yeah, another repeat. We're doing this over and over again until you guys, get it. So if active label is not equal to null, it means it already has an active label. I want my active label dot back color, I want it to be equal to white. Color dot white. There we go. All right, so that'll take it away. Let's try this now. So again, we make it null. We set it to white, right? We do this before we make it null, because if we make it null, we can't turn it to white. And we can't make it white unless it has a value. If we try and make it white when it doesn't have a value, it's going to give us an error, because active label might be pointing at nothing. Okay? Let's try this again now. See what happens. So again, I click onto it and click away, and it's gone. Right? That's how it should be. Click onto it, click away, and it's gone. All right? So that's the next effect. All right, this is a great place to put it up on GitHub, right? I've done all these little changes. I've done some basic special effects, and I think it's a great place to do that. So again, I'm going to kind of go here. What was that? That's okay. You can still get my version B on GitHub. So I'm going to go to Changes. I'm going to say these are the things I changed. I'm going to say that I added simple user experience effects, right? So basically some simple things that I wanted to do, and I'm going to commit all, and then I'm going to sync, and I'm going to push. So those things. There we go. You can't change my stuff. You have to take away you have to point to your remote, not mine. All right, so this is cool. So all right, so we've done this thing and it's good. And when we start, we see this little keyboard doesn't come up. But here's something. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it really be nice if the keyboard was out of our way when we designed? Like look, like right now when we're doing it, our keyboard's in our way. I don't want my keyboard there. I want it hidden. Can I do that? Can I go here inside my properties and select my keyboard? Here's my keyboard. Look, it's calculator button table layout panel, or whatever the hell it is, right? Okay, here it is, and I want to put it off screen. Can I do that? Let's see. I want to put it here. No. It won't allow you to do it like that. However, I could put it off screen with numerically. I could say numerically put it off screen somewhere, right? But then sometimes you'll lose it. You won't even know you have it, right? So what the nice thing would be is if I can make my form temporarily bigger. See, what I asked you to do on your assignment 4 is, for assignment 4 I said, your form must be 320 by 480 when it's active, right? When it's not active, you can make it as big as you want, right? Until you make that form go, I don't care, right? That's your design. And so what I mean by that is, what if we made this form just so that you can, so to help you, I'm going to bring up properties here. I'm going to go into the properties object here. Here we go. I want to make my form much bigger. Well, first of all, I need to have an idea of how big I want to make it. So how big, how tall is this keyboard, right? So right now we know that my keyboard, if I was going to go to my size, here's my size for my keyboard. So first of all, let's go to the keyboard. Here's the keyboard highlighted. And I want to look at the, let's hide this thing for a second. And I want to look at the keyboard. You can see the size is 280 by 223. So what's 280? 280 is the width, and height is 223. So that means I want to at least have another 223 points on my form, at least. So my form shouldn't be just 320 by 480, but another 223. Hell, let's make it 300 more, okay? So what does that mean? Temporarily, only temporarily, I want to make my form bigger so I can do my design, okay? And then when I start my application, I want to put it back to the way it's supposed to be, okay? Let's do those things. So what I mean is that my size of my form is going to be, the height of my form is going to be an additional 300 points while I'm designing. So instead of 480, let's make it 780. 780, not 740. There. Why is it changing? Why is it changing to 740? How come? It's not letting me go beyond 740. There's a reason, by the way. Because, no, that is the height of the form. It's because there's maximum. So let's just go down here. Here we go. And you can see that I can put it way at the bottom, down here, like this. So here's my form. If I wanted to make this, how about if I wanted to make this form 800? Can I do that? If I said 800, how come it's stopping me at 740? Because my screen size prevents it from happening. My screen size right now, it's not allowing me to make a form so big. All right? But in real life, you can make it whatever size you want. Okay? So I made it 740, right? Why is that? Because this way, when I look up here, I can design my form a little easier now. Look, I have all this space on my form, right? Guys, your final form will not look like this. When your final form runs, you don't want it to be this big. Look, you don't want it to be like this. That doesn't make any sense. It's 320 by 480. So what does that mean? When the form loads, make it 320 by 480. How do I do that? I'm going to go back to my calculator form. I'm going to go back to the load event. Here it is. When the form loads, change the size, right? So I'm going to say something like this. I want to make my size of my form. So calculator form, so this one, dot size. So here's something else. Calculator form is this. I want to say dot size, but how come I can't do dot size here? And why can't I use calculator form? I'm going to start to cry pretty soon, you know, because I'm really confused, right? Guys, you're developers, don't cry. The reason why I can't do calculator form is because this is a calculator form. Remember that this form here is calculator form. I'm trying to call calculator form from itself, which doesn't make any sense. So what I really want to do is, there's two ways I can do this. I can use the keyword this, dot, size. I could do that, right? Or we know this is implied, so I can just use the keyword size. Size in this case means the form's size. If you're confused, use the keyword this dot size, which means this form size. And I want to set my form size to a value. Can I do this? Can I say that, like, you know, I only want to change my y value. I want to say that my y value size is equal to like 480, right? Or my height, right? Size dot height. Here it is. I want to make that 480. Can I do that? Can I just change that value to 480? Is that allowing me? How come it doesn't allow me to? It doesn't. You can't do it that way. What you have to do is you have to create a new size value and then assign that to the form. Same thing with location, same thing with any kind of thing, any numbers like that on the form, where it has, it's a structure, where I have height and width, or x and y, you can't assign the actual value. Those are read-only values, okay? So how do you make it? It has to be something like this. Instead of my size.height, I got to say something like this. I got to say that my size is equal to a new, and by the way, if you hover over size, you can see that the form, this size is of type form size. So I'm going to say is a new size of how big, width, and height, right? In order to, if you don't know the order, you can see that width and height is what you can do, right? So if I want to say my width is 320, that's going to stay the same. So 320, and my height is 480. I can just simply say 320 and 480. All right, so that's my new size. That's how you do size, location, and a bunch of other values, guys. You cannot access the actual property, the sub-property, directly, okay? And if I was to do that, if I press start now, you can see that when the form loads, it's back to normal, okay? So during design time, we can make it as big as we want. During runtime, it's going to be the size we need. What was that?
Well, I didn't know that size wasn't designed for anything. I didn't know.
You didn't know what?
If you made a new object of size,
Yes.
they're not using it anymore. So how is it using it?
How is it using it?
Yeah.
It's making it. I make a new size object and I assign it to this dot size, the size of my form.
Also, when you put size, it just knows. You just write size.
It's not, you just don't put size. If you notice that this form that we're using right now is of type calculator form, right? So because it's of type, it because it inherits from the form superclass, all forms have size as a property, right? So instead of me saying calculator form size, I really want to say this size, this form itself. The form itself has a property size, right? So I can do this size, or I can actually put the keyword this in front, and it means that this form's size. Notice that it grays out. Sorry?
So it's the property is somewhere in the backcode.
But of course it's in the backcode, because my form, remember my form here? My form is of type form. Every form, if I go to definition, every form, right? Every form actually inherits from something called container control. But each form, this is the actual form. You can do this. We can look down at the form. The form has a size property of type size. That's what it is. And if I looked at the size property, let's do go to definition for that too. You can see that size is a public struct, right? Here's the size struct. There it is. And you can see that size is read-only. See how it's put the read-only? That's what it is, right? That's what size is. And you can see that it takes a point, right? That's one option. Or it takes width and height. So you can do that for anything in system dot, generics, or any system that's in C#. You can go to definition. It'll actually show you the definition of that class. Okay? Let's get back out of here. Alright, so I'm just backing up here with a little arrow on the left. Okay? So you can see that calculator form is of type form, which means it has a size value, and I'm taking the size value and assigning it to a new size. Right? Because it's a read-only value. Okay, cool. So I've got this read-only value. I've assigned my form, and now I can put other stuff in there, and it's okay. But what I really want is when I want to click my calculator now, it's too low. Look, if I left it like this, my buttons, which are down here, are never going to appear. I can never see them. I can't have that here. I want to have this, my keyboard appear somewhere close to my label. So this is first iteration. My first iteration has no animation. I just want to bring my keyboard right there, wherever I need it, okay? So how do I do that? So whenever I click on my active label, right, I want to change the position of my keyboard to be my active label plus about, guys, I've done this before, 55. Don't ask me where I got the number. I've done it before, all right? 55, right? Let's do that. So I want to say that my position, the position of my calculator layout, remember I said location and position? I have to make a new something. So I want to say something like my calculator table layout panel, this one, dot location. I can't just say the location of X. I can't do that, remember? Because it's a struct, that's read only. I have to say it's a new point, and it's going to have an X and Y coordinate. Okay, oh boy. What's my X coordinate? I have no clue. Let's check. Here's my X coordinate. If I scroll down, you can see that if I click onto the, if I click here, and I click onto the proper calculator button layout, table layout panel, you can see that from a location perspective right now, by default, it starts off at 12 and 466. So 12 is my calculator's X coordinate. Do I want this to change? And the answer is no. I always wanted to make it 12. 12 should be the default value. Now there's two things I can do here. I can hard code it, so it's always 12, right? Or I can just record that number somewhere and then access it. For now, I'm going to hard code it because we're not refactoring. We're not in that phase. We're just making it work, okay? So I'm going back to here, and I'm saying that when I want to make this new point, right, that it starts off as an X of 12, right, and my label, my active labels location on the Y-axis plus 55 points. Active label dot location dot Y plus 55. Does this make any sense to you? So I'm making a new point. My point is X and Y coordinates on the form, right? My X is not going to change. It's going to stay at 12. But my Y, whatever I'm clicking on, it's going to take my thing and put it there. There's a problem though. You're going to see a problem. Let's take a look and see what this does. Right? It's not exactly what we expect. Bam. Okay, this is cool. What about when I do this? Oh man, how come this thing is under this thing? That's no good. Right? We want this thing to be in front. Right? That's what we want it to be. Think about these things, all these objects in a layer, in different layers, okay? We want this to be the top layer. We want this to appear on top all the time. So let's do that. So one thing we want to do is we want to say that, hey, let's change the location, but let's also change it so that whenever I do this, it's on top. Now I can do it here in my calculator form in this active label click. We can do that, or I can do it somewhere else. For now, I'm going to say that active label, it's not active label, it's calculator table layout panel dot. And this is where it's weird. It's not something that you see in your properties, right? It's a method, bring to front. If I say bring to front, it's a method. What this will do is it'll layer this thing to the front, to the top basically. Alright, so if I do that, and if I press this, then I go like this, and if I go here, it's on top now. And you can see that wherever I press is good. But what about if I want to press the other one? I got to click away and click back. Click away and click back. That's how it should work. Okay? Make sense? So click here, it makes the keyboard go up. Click here, it makes the keyboard go up. If I click away, it goes away. If I click here, it goes back. What's that? Alright, so that's what it does. Right? So it's much better than it was before. And here's another problem. What about if I make the form this big? And what about if I make it maximized? I shouldn't be able to do that with my form. I got to disable those things. Let's do that now. So I'm going to go back to my form, and I want to disable the growing and shrinking of my form. Okay? Because that usually is not a good thing. So I'm going to click on my form. I'm going to go to Properties, and I'm going to go to up near the top where it says the form border style. My form border style controls if it's sizable or not. I want to make it so that it's not sizable, so I'm going to choose fixed single. By the way, that may not make any sense to you, right? Fixed single. What does that mean? It means that the form is fixed and it's a single size border, single width border. It's not double or 3D or something. So if I press now start, you can see that I cannot resize the form this way, but I can still do this, which is also very bad. That breaks my layout. Let's take that away. So you can see that the maximum size box, my maximized box, I can make that false. So I cannot make the form maximized. So press start. And if I try and maximize now, it's grayed out. I can't do this. I can't resize it. I can do all these things. These are pretty good. These special effects work. Alright, cool. So we've done some more form fixes. Let's put this up on GitHub. So again, stop it. I'm going to go to Team Explorer, and I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Changes. I'm going to say something like Adjusted Form and Numeric Keyboard Properties for better UX. Okay, that's what we did, user experience, that's what it stands for. I'm going to press commit all, sync, and push. Notice, by the way, why am I doing this syncing and pushing with GitHub? Because I want you guys to do multiple syncs and pushes. Please do not give me assignment number 4 with one push. If you give me one push, you're going to lose 2 marks off the top. GitHub is required. You have to use GitHub as you go. And if you look at your assignment number 4, it tells you, as you're developing your application, use GitHub. Because this way, worst case scenario, you can always go back. You can always fix stuff. Alright, so cool, we've got this thing now, but what I really want is this. I want my keyboard, I don't want it just to teleport up. I want it so that it flows up. It kind of goes up like it would on your phone, right? I want it to move up. Okay, here's the difference. You're going to hear this word, animation. Please do not be fooled by what this thing means. Okay, it doesn't mean that you're going to make a little animated character like Mickey Mouse or something else like, you know, Iron Man, the animated character. Or it's not going to be like that. That's not the animation we're talking about. All right? In fact, animation is probably the wrong word for this. It's really translation. I'm going to take this keyboard layout and move it. That's all I'm doing. Moving means translation. You can also talk about it as locomotion. I'm moving, or I'm using locomotion, right, to move my object from one place to another. That's all I'm doing. Now, if I move it from one place or to another immediately, like I just did, that doesn't look that great. If I want to move it over time, then it's like animation. It's like an animation effect, right? Because I'm moving it over time. If I want to move something over time, I need a timer. And by default, and I talk about this in your Lab 10, by default there is a timer component. Let's take a look at that. So on the toolbox, this is new. This is new, guys.
Whenever you keep one of the labels, calculator pop out. So it comes from we have to make the calculator left. So what can we do?
And you do the thing longer, bigger, wider, and then you make it go from the right. Yes, you would have to make it so the question is, what if I want to make the keyboard come from the right instead of the top? The problem is you can't make it go from the right because the keyboard can't live off screen right now for you, right? I mean it can, but you want to design with it so you can see it if you want to adjust it, right? So you could make this really much bigger, right? And then you could put the keyboard over here, right? So I could say something like, I mean, again, this is only one way to do it, by the way. There's many, many ways to do the same thing. I could kind of highlight this keyboard and put it on the side somewhere if I want it to come from the right. And then you want it to come in from the right, so you can make it so that it is something like this. And then it'll just come over this way. All right? But that's not what we want. That's not the effect that I want. I want it to come from the bottom, right? So the way I want it to do is I want it to kind of scroll up from the bottom or come up from the bottom. So I need to make it move, and I need to make it move over time. I need a timer. If you go to your toolbar or toolbox, we're going to just collapse our common controls for a second, and we're going to go down to something called components. This part. Components have a lot of different kinds of things in here that you've never seen before, right? Don't be afraid of them. But there's one difference between components and controls. A control appears on your form. A component modifies your form, and you may or may not see it. So here's an example of that. If I take this timer component and I drag and drop it onto your form, guess what happens? It doesn't appear on the form, but it appears in this gutter down here. So this means that this down here means I have a component that's applied to the entire form. It's the timer component, and you need this for Lab 10. So what is a timer component? Let's take a look at that. I'm just going to hide this for a second and bring up my properties. If I click on my timer component, you can see that the name is timer1. Is that descriptive for you? No. Timer1 means nothing. Let's make it so that it is the animation timer. Something that makes sense. So we'll call this animation timer, although it's really not animations. There we go, animation timer. Okay, cool. We have another property of the animation timer. It says interval. Interval is 100. 100 what? It's a timer. No. How many? Milliseconds, right? Computers like milliseconds, right? Usually we work with milliseconds. So if you get something like interval, it's in milliseconds. Okay, cool. That means, interval means that the timer is going to beat like a drum. Okay, think about this. When I say beat like a drum, it means every time, every 100 milliseconds, it's going to generate an event. It's going to generate the tick event. A timer has ticks. That's what they're called, ticks. All right? It's almost like the ticks of a clock. That's what it's like. Think about the ticks of a clock, right? And every 100 milliseconds, it's going to tick. 100 milliseconds is 1/10 of a second, right? That means the maximum number of ticks it can do in a second is 6. That's too slow for animation, guys. 6 frames per second. Each tick is a frame. 6 frames per second. All right, if that's really slow. Typically, movies nowadays are at least 30 frames per second. 30 ticks. Okay? And most video games are 60 ticks per second, or 60 frames. Okay, that's what they're called. 60 frames per second. So how do I generate that number? I have to take 1,000 milliseconds, which is 1 second, and divide it by 60. And we get a number that's like 16.66666 non-terminating repeating. which means that it's going to be something like this. Okay, and it says it's not valid. It wants a value that's valid. We can just put in 16 if you want, which is slightly faster than 60 frames per second. I'd rather go faster than slower. Okay, so cool. So we have this 16 milliseconds. There's a reason why we picked it, because it's close to 60 frames per second. By the way, most human eyes get fooled at 24 frames per second. That's what they used to do most movies with. When they used to have the old style movies, 24 frames per second was standard movie frame rate. Now, we have digital movies, we have 3D movies, we operate a lot higher. More frames. More, it's almost like more cells, more images every second. The more images, it fools your eyes. Our human persistence of vision cannot detect the difference between 30 and 60 frames per second, unless we have a lot of stuff going on. And then you see some jitter, some weird, stuff that's going on the screen. And also from the calculations, how many calculations this is going to do. So this is going to do 60 calculations every second. It's going to tick 60 times every second. It's going to beat its drum 60 times per second. I'm giving you all these analogies so you understand what's happening. All right. That's our animation timer. But however, we want to capture that tick event. And the way to do that is to double click on the animation timer name itself, down here in the gutter. If I double click, I create an animation timer tick event handler. So we can say that this is the event handler for the animation timer tick event. All right. Guess what? This event is never going to be called right now. Why? If I go back to my calculator form, you can see that my animation timer is not enabled. My enabled is false. My enabled is false. When do I want my animation timer to be enabled? You're computer scientists. When do I want my animation timer to be enabled? Yes? When I do what? When I click on this. When I click on the label, I want my keyboard to come up. I want to start my animation timer, right? And when I'm done, I want to stop my animation timer because I don't want it to go forever, right? All right, so this is how it works. So then when I do this, in my click events for my active label click, I want to activate my animation timer. So I can say that animation timer dot enabled is equal to true. I enable my timer. It starts counting. Okay? That's what it does. And then when my animation timer starts, I want to disable it. Okay, wait. Does it disable right away? No. It disables after 16 milliseconds. Right? Well, no. It doesn't disable after 16 milliseconds. If I just put this right in here right away, it means it's only going to do one interval. That means it's going to move like this. Doop. Really, really small. I want it to disable it when my keyboard has reached the point that it's supposed to be. Where is my keyboard supposed to be? My active label Y component plus 55 as it moves up, right? So instead of doing something that looks like this, which is, hey, let's take my calculator button layout panel location and move it to my active location plus 55, don't do this here. I want to increment my Y location, or in this case decrement it. I want to remove Y's until I come all the way to this location here. Why am I removing Y's instead of adding them? Because remember the 0, 0 point of my form is the top left corner. I go X to the right and positive Y down, which means positive Y is greater down, and I want to go up, which is negative Y. I want to subtract Y's until I get to my keyboard that comes up. Okay? So I don't want to do this. I'm just going to comment this part out. This was my idea, my first iteration. All right? My second iteration is going to do something like this. I want to say that my current location for my my keyboard, whatever that keyboard location is, right? I want to capture it. Okay? So I want to say something like var current location is equal to my calculator layout panel, table layout panel location. And I only care about, do I really care about the whole location? Or do I only care about the y? I only care about the y value. So the y value is the only thing I care about, which means, guess what? If I did this, right, it means that I'm only getting an integer back here. So var, when I say var, I don't have to figure this out as an integer. It is an integer, right? However, if I did this, and if I made this the whole thing, like this, now my current location is a point, x and y. I don't care about x and y, I only care about y. So my current location is y. Okay, cool. What I want to do is I want to increment or decrement y, my current location, by some value. Let's say 10 points every frame. Every time my clock ticks, it's going to move this thing 10 points. Okay? So I'm going to say that current location minus minus, or minus equals to 10, let's say. So I'm subtracting 10 from my location. Cool. Cool. Now, it's going to go 10 points every frame, okay? But then, I need it to stop. It's got to stop somewhere. Where is it going to stop? My active label.y plus 55. Okay, so I'm going to say if my current location is less than or equal to, less than means it can overshoot sometimes because depending on how my clock works, I might go beyond where I want to go, all right? So less than or equal to my active label dot location dot y, right, plus 55. I can do this if this is true. If my current location is beyond that, I moved it up. That's when it increments, right? Hey, by the way, here's something I want you to think about. My current location is equal to this, my y, right? And I want to move this up. I want to do something with it, in fact. I want to change my stuff, my calculator button. If I do this, my var is going to be wiped out every frame. Every time it comes back here and does another tick, it's going to wipe out current location. I can't have that happen. I got to do something, right? In fact, what I need to do is I need to change my calculator panel layout location. So calculator table panel location is equal to a new point, which is going to be the current location of y. Uh-oh. Maybe I should have made it current location x and y, not just y. Huh? Then we have all kinds of other stuff to do. So I can take the pane here, or I can take the pane over here. Let's take the pane earlier on. Let's just do this for a second. Let's just rewrite this a little bit. So say that this is current location. I can't do this. I could say that my current location is equal to a new point, which is my current location, my current location dot x, right, plus my current location dot y minus 10. I could do this, and that's my new current location. That's my new one. And then what I can say is my calculator button table layout panel dot location is equal to this current location now. Current location. All this does is it does exactly the same thing. It just subtracts 10 from the y component. Yes?
This current location is for the keyboard to pop up.
Yes. And then what I want to say is my current location dot y, when my current location dot y is less than my active label location dot y plus 55, then what I want to do is I want to set my current location, whatever that is, which is this calculator button table layout panel location. I want to make it equal to a new point that is equal to my current location dot x plus my active label dot y location dot y plus 55. So what am I doing here? Why? And I don't want to confuse you, okay? So I want to talk about this a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying this. So first I start off, here's my algorithm. First I start off like this. I say, okay, capture the current location in x and y's, okay? What is that? I don't know. Wherever my keyboard is at that particular moment in time. Remember that the time keeps on ticking, just like the old song, Into the Future, right? It keeps on going, right? It keeps on ticking 16 milliseconds every single time, right? So now, in this particular frame, in this particular instance of time, I say, well, what's my current location? my current location of my keyboard. Where is that? By the way, if you don't like calculator button table layout panel because it's too long, we've been using it like a keyboard. Let's just call it for now because it makes sense. It makes sense that this is our little keyboard, our calculator keyboard, or our numeric keyboard. Let's just call it that so we know what it is. All right? So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to rename. I'm going to call this thing the numeric keyboard. Because that's really, we'll call it numeric keyboard panel. How about that, just to make it nice. So my numeric keyboard panel's location is the current location. That's where it starts off, okay? And then I say this, I want my current location to decrement. So, decrement current location of numeric keyboard by some value, in this case by 10. I'm moving it up, right? And then what I'm saying is, okay, fine. So I change my current location, and I want to set that to my numeric keyboards. My numeric keyboard panel location is equal to this current location that I just did. By the way, I could have written this in one line. I don't have to write it in 2 lines. I did it so that just is a little clearer. Next, I say this. I compare current location, so numeric keyboard, current location, with the label, the active label, right? If it's beyond my active label, right? If it's beyond my active label or equal somehow to my active label's position plus 55, stop. And what I want to do is not only do this numeric keyboard panel location, I'm going to set it to 55, because if it goes beyond, I want it to snap to 55, right? I also want to turn off my counter. So I can say that my animation label, animation timer dot enabled is equal to false. Okay guys, this is the most complicated piece of code that I'm going to give you today, right? It's not that complicated, but you're going to need something exactly like it for your lab 10. Because lab 10, I've asked you to say this. Show me a form that appears for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is 3,000 milliseconds, right? When the form finishes appearing, get rid of it. Interval, right? When the form is done being 3,000 milliseconds, get rid of it. Okay, so let's see how this works. Let's see if this thing actually does anything, right? We've coded it, but we don't know. Let's try it. So again, we started off, and we have our form. It kind of comes up, and I click on this, and it goes whoop, right? And I click this, and it goes whoop, and here it goes whoop. But what happens when I do this? And then I click this. It goes like this. It kind of teleports there. That's not good. In fact, what I really want it to do is, when I'm done, I want it to come back down, right? Uh-oh, how do I do that? But see what it did? So if I start over again, I'll show you what it does here. Let's take a look. First of all, question for you guys. Is this fast enough for you? That's kind of slow for me, right? I like my keyboard to pop up really quickly, whoop, but not like instantaneously. So maybe a value of 20 might be better, right? So I'm going to go back here and say, I want to change this by 20. So I think that might be a better value. And again, you have to vary it and see what that is. That's a trial and error thing, right? So let's try this out now. That's better. That's a little bit quicker, a little bit more responsive. I like that, right? And then you can see that in the short case, when it's really close, it doesn't matter, right? Okay, cool. But what I want this to do, this part right here, is if my keyboard has never been selected, if my keyboard is not active. If my keyboard is active, I want to actually do the opposite thing. I want to push it away from the form. That's what I want it to do. So how do I do that? First things first, before we do that piece. First of all, we have 5 minutes to get this done. I want to put this up on GitHub, because this will be your solution, right? Worst case scenario. So I want to put this up on GitHub. I want to say that I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Changes. And then I'm going to say something like added animated keyboard up, and we'll say up direction. Alright, so we know what that means. I know what it means. I'm going to go click on sync and then push, and now I have my changes done. I keep on pushing to GitHub because I want to keep track of all my changes just in case something goes wrong. You can always go back. Okay, now, so this is interesting, but this whole thing here is something where I'm pushing this thing up, but I want it to go down, right? So here's a question. If I'm going to get it down, do I need my current location? Yes, I do. I always need to keep track of my current location when this interval is turned on, okay? When does the interval turn on? My interval turns on when, right? When, so far, when I click onto this active label click. But my interval should always also turn on when I've pressed the done button or I click away on the form. My interval should be turned on again so I can push the form away. And also somehow my program should know that my keyboard is up and I need to put it back down. That's what I need to do. Okay? I need to tell it to go away. How do I do this? How do I make it go? Well, first of all, let's think about this for a second. I want it to go in the opposite direction, right? But I know that my form is active, right? My actual keyboard form is active. I need two states. That's what I need, guys. I need two states. I need an up state and a down state. How can I do this? Think about this now. I could have a Boolean, right? Some kind of Boolean that says going up, like an elevator. I'm going up. I could have a Boolean that says going down, right? I could have a Boolean. But Booleans can be really messy, right? Because what if I have a bunch of different states? Going right, going left, spinning around, right? I can have a lot of different animations, right? So keeping track of all those Booleans by themselves is really messy. It's better for me to have an enumeration. Who does not remember enumerations? We should remember what they are. You probably don't. Let's make it, all right? We're actually going to do it inside this form to make it simple. But typically what we'd want to do is we'd want to make it somewhere else, like its own class, its own enumeration, all right? You know what? I'm not going to be lazy. Let's just do it. I'm going to go here to my Solution Explorer, all right? And in my Solution Explorer, what I want to do in 2 minutes is make this thing happen. It's not going to happen, guys. We're not going to have time. So for those people who want to leave, right, in 2 minutes, you can leave. I'll keep recording, and I'll have the solution, okay? But here's what I want to do. I want to right-click here, all right? So far I have this form, and I have these resources. I'm going to right-click on my lesson. I'm going to say Add, New Item. Now notice my new item also has a class, right? But my new item also can have other things. It can have user controls. It can have about boxes. It can have a bunch of other stuff here, right? And what I really want is an enumeration, okay? So do you see enumeration in here? The answer is no. I can simply pick class, and I can change this into enumeration instead. So instead of, it'll be a CS file, and I want to change this into, you know, kind of an animation.cs file, okay? So let's just call it animation. And I'm going to pick add. So namespace is the same. This is what this thing does. It makes a new class. But instead of a class, I want to make it an enum. Enum, right? That's the enumeration. All right, there's two states I want for my enumeration. Up, down, right? So I want to say that there's going to be an up. I'm going to make it in caps too. And I'm going to also choose a down value. Okay, what are the up and down values? They're actually just numbers, 0 and 1, all right? But they're friendly names for us to remember. For example, I might want to do in the future some other animation. Spin right, spin left, you know, shrink, whatever kind of special effect I want, right? I don't want to keep track of Booleans. I want to keep track of something called states. And now we come to that discussion, which means I want to create this idea that by default we start up in an up state, all right? By the way, I can also have another state, none. I'm not going up and I'm not going down. I'm idle. So let's put that in there too. So we'll say that there's the idle state, there's the up state, there's the down state, and also what I want to do is keep track of the number of states. Number of states. Hey, question for you. Why would I care about number of states? Because what it does is it counts in zero-based counting. 0, 1, 2. And number of states would be 3. Guess what? 1, 2, 3, right? So number of states, instead of me having to calculate how many states there are, Number of states automatically tells me how big my state, the number of states I have. And sometimes it's important to know that. Cool, now that I have this animation enumeration, I can use it in my code. I could say something like this. I could say something that in my calculator form.cs file, right? I have another thing. I have an animation state, public animation state. That's what I want, my animation. Here's my animation. And by the way, if I'm calling it animation, but I could have called it animation state, right? I want to make my animation, I want to call this my current state. We'll call it my current animation state, just to be clear. We could also call it, just to be even more clear, maybe just call it animation state. All right, so my animation state. Now notice it says that if I do this, it says inconsistent accessibility. Field type animation is less accessible than field type calculator form animation state. Why is that?
By default, the enum is titled.
By default, my enum, which is right here, because I didn't mention that what it is, enum is private, so I have to make this public. Right? That's what it means. So here, if I go back, you can see now my animation state is a value. But what's the default state? There is none. I'm going to set it. When my form loads, my default animation state is equal to animation dot idle. Okay? So by default, my keyboard's not moving. That's what it means. Okay? My animation state is idle. And what I wanted to do is, when it is up, I want to call the up method. When it is down, I want to call the down method. All right? The only time that it's ever going to be idle is when I'm not moving at all. Make sense? So, right back at you guys. I'm going to go back down here. All right? And I'm going to say that in my animation timer event, all right, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that if, depending on my animation state, I want to do different things. This whole part right here, this whole part should be a method. It should be the move keyboard up method. Right? Let's do that. So I'm going to take this whole thing, right? And I'm going to go to quick actions and refactorings, and I'm going to call this thing move extract method move move keyboard or numeric keyboard. What could be very specific? Numeric keyboard up. Right? There we go. Apply. So what's happening is move numeric keyboard up is all this stuff. It moves it up. But I don't want to always move it up. I want to check. I want to say switch. I want to switch my animation state, right? And depending on what my animation state is, case if it's animation dot idle, then well do nothing, right? I don't want to do anything if it's that, right? Case if my animation dot is up, right, then I want to do this. I want to do move keyboard up, right? And case if my animation state is down, then I want to move it down, but I don't have that yet. Does that make sense? What is this called? By the way, guys, new pattern, state machine pattern, right? What it does, it takes a look at the state of an object, and depending on its state, it does an action, okay? When it's done, when my keyboard moving is up is done, I want to change my state back to idle. I want to say that my animation state, right? My animation state is equal to animation dot idle. I want to kind of set it to idle again. It's not moving anymore. All right. However, what I want is for this whole function to exist, but in the other way, the other direction. So I want to copy this whole function, and I'm going to paste it somewhere, maybe underneath, like this. And instead of move numeric keyboard up, I'm going to call it move numeric keyboard down. And what we're going to do is we're going to say that, okay, my current location, instead of decrementing, I'm going to increment by 20. So it's plus 20. There we go. My numeric keyboard is this. And then my check function, my border check, is going to be if my current location.y is greater than or equal to, and what should it be? The bottom of the screen plus some other value, like 300. So it should be something like that. And remember what we made it, just to remind you, we actually set the whole thing here. My keyboard, if you notice my keyboard location, which is right here, starts at, here's my numeric keyboard. It starts, the location starts at 466. So I want to use that number again. Now, by the way, I'm using hard-coded numbers. In the future, we can make some other structure when we refactor. We're not refactoring it now, we're just making it work. So I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say that when my current location.y is greater than or equal to 466, for now we're just going to take that value, right? Then my numeric keyboard panel.location is equal to new point, right? Whatever it is, plus, which is 466. I'm going to hard code it. I'm going to say that my animation timer enabled is false, and my animation idle is idle. Now here's something. Do I ever hide my keyboard again? The answer is no. This would be a great place to hide my keyboard again. So now I'm also going to go to my numeric keyboard panel dot visible is equal to false. So I'm going to make it invisible again. Also, one more thing I need to do is I need to make sure that this location, this type right here, this is triggered. The up and down state, I don't have a down state right now. I don't have nothing that triggers my down state. So move numeric keyboard down is what this is going to do, right? I want it to trigger the down state somehow, and it gets triggered when I click away, goes down, or I click done, that goes down. Those are the two states, done or when I click away. Let's do that. So if I go to where it says, if I scroll up, so when it says finalize output, I want to set my animation state. So I want to say that animation state dot is equal to animation dot down, right? And I also want to start my timer again. Animation timer, right, dot enabled is equal to true, right? And I'm going to copy this for a second because I'm going to use the exact same thing when I do my click away thing. When I click somewhere else, not here, in finalize output, but when I do something like this, when I click on the back of my calculator form, I want also this to happen, except I don't want this visibility to be false here. I'm going to turn it false later. I want my keyboard to be visible. And the same thing goes with my done. I forgot that. My finalized output, I don't want my visibility to be false. I want to do that later when I move it out of the way. Whew. Okay, lots of little things. Guys, it's recorded for you. I just want to show you the possibilities. Could you have done this yourself? Yes. But I want to show you the way, one way that it can be done. Now, there's troubleshooting to be done, and I'm not going to guarantee, here's my disclaimer, I'm not going to guarantee this is going to work because I've never tested it. Let's try this out. Right? So, let's make it work. All right, so here, we go make the animation keyboard come up. Oh, man. What happened? See what I'm telling you?
Oh, it is coming up a second.
We don't know where it is,
Yeah.
right? We don't know where this thing is, right?
It stops.
So, okay, that's weird. How come it stops, right? Well, because we gave it an up state, right? But did we? When we chose this click event, we didn't say that the up state is, we said animation timer is true, but we never told it the up state. So we said the animation state is equal to animation.up. We never did that. Sorry. Let's try this again. Oof. Click. Click away. Click here. Click away. Click here. Click done. Click here. And what about here? It keeps going. Click done. It goes away. There you go. So there's your animated keyboard. You could use this in your code for your, since you stuck around, I can tell you if you want to use it for your assignment number 4, you have free reign to use my code if you want to get your bonus marks, right? This will be worth some marks. If you can integrate this code into your own assignment 4 code, it's free reign. Go ahead, guys. I'm giving you guys a gift. Now, you don't have to. It's optional. Someone asked me through email, Tom, do I have to really, if you showed us the keyboard, do I have to? The answer is you don't have to. But why not? I just gave you everything you need, right? So it's up to you if you want to use it or not. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to put this up on GitHub, and I'll see you guys next week, actually. All right? Take care. Yes.